It's Monday morning in Seattle. It is Monday afternoon in Ukraine. My name is the Malcontent. We haven't done one of these in a long time. Let's take a walk through the battlefield and what is going on in the Russia-Ukraine war. Today is March 31st, 2025, and because all of this may be going away in a week, if you want to continue to get these updates, you can follow us on our Substack. Let's dive into it. We're going to go ahead and start in Russia. We're going to start in the Kursk Oblast. A quick little explainer on the map. Anywhere you see a red icon, that means that was where Russian troops were geolocated. There's a video. Our team or people we work with confirm that Russian troops were there. Anywhere you see a blue icon, that means Ukrainian troops were geolocated there. Anywhere you see a purple icon, that means North Korean troops or North Korean and Russian troops together were in those areas. Anywhere you see in yellow is no man's land. We're not sure what's going on in that area. We're not sure who exactly controls those areas. First place that I'm going to start is over on the border of Ukraine and Russia. Here in Veselovika, there was a very dubious flag raising over the weekend by Russian forces. This is on a water tower about 600 meters from the border. There were no Russian troops visible. There was just a flag. We can confirm a Russian flag's there. We can't confirm that any troops are there. There has been some Russian activity confirmed on the northern edge of this village. Most of the village is down here. And Russia conducted an airstrike down here in the southern part. So we know Ukraine's here. We know that Russia is right here on the northern edge of that village. This over here is the Sudza border crossing, and we know that Russia is located here. We're just not sure how much of a firm control they have on that area because Russian sources have been reporting that there is continued fighting south of Gogoloveka. I really hope I said that right. I don't think I did. And because Russian sources are claiming that there is fighting going on south of here, we're keeping this area in the yellow. Now, Russian sources have said that Ukraine controls this village here. And then if I scroll down a little bit further to the southern part of the Kursk Oblast, Russian sources have said that Ukraine continues to control this village. I believe that's Gornal. Ukrainian forces hold the northern part of Guevo. So we have Ukraine holding the northern part of Guevo, and we have Russian forces with this loose grip on the southern part. And again, we know that Russian forces are here. We know Ukrainian forces are there. We're feeling pretty good about territorial control. Let's go ahead and move south down to Belgorod, where there is some interesting activity going on over here. Now, Russian sources have been saying all of last week, let me zoom out a little bit more for you here, that Ukrainian forces keep coming into Popovoka and we keep pushing them out. But over the weekend, Russian sources released videos showing Ukrainian forces in these three areas, which says to us Ukraine controls Popovoka. Ukrainian forces very clearly control Demidovka because most of these geolocations were over the weekend. The reason that we have all of this area under Ukrainian control is that for Russian forces to be in this area, first of all, there's a river that runs along here. So there's no way that Russian troops are here because they would be encircled if they are. So they're not there. I'm not saying Russian troops are encircled. What I'm saying is they can't possibly be there. For Russian troops to be in this area, they would have to be moving almost a kilometer through these open fields. Now, if we go a little bit further to the south, there was some geolocations of Ukrainian forces last week down here, but we don't know if there is a permanent presence here or not. And that's why this area is in that yellow, this no man's land. This is where it's going to be the weird part because there's just not a lot that's happening in Ukraine. If we come over here to Kupiansk, Russian forces are still holding their positions on the west bank of the Oskil River. These areas, but these are probably going to get harder to maintain as the weather gets warmer, the river's going to rise. There are no permanent bridges there's no engineered crossing. We've been looking on satellite images, we've seen no signs. So all of these troops here are being supported by small boats. This is very difficult. We've been told don't worry about this, to be really blunt, because we're worried about it as analysts, and we have been told, don't worry about it. Russian forces made a small advance. This is what I mean by there's very little happening in Ukraine. So this is Orlyansk. The line of conflict was about here. Russian forces made this advance here, so maybe a kilometer. Russian forces have been stopped down here by Yamplovika. They have not been able to advance in this area. One of my favorite villages of your long-term malcontent, this is Bilohorivka. Russian forces made a very, very small advance in this hilly area, hilly region right here. They were at the top of the ridge. They've been seen down here, so there's a very small change here. Russia has just been throwing massive amounts of resources in this area, trying to advance here, and they have not been able to advance. There has been tremendous amount of armor losses, which is why this area is in yellow, all in this region here. Ivano-Darovika, this is another one where there's been this small advance of maybe 1,000 meters. We believe Russian forces are here. We've had a couple of geolocations around this village. This has been going on for 2 years. Russian forces every now and then kind of break through into these fields. But if I zoom in a little bit more, you can see this is very unfavorable terrain for Russian troops to be able to hold. It's also very unfavorable terrain for Ukrainian forces to advance in the other direction. There really isn't much going on in Chasiv Yar in the sense of territorial change. There has been a lot of fighting. Russia has made 4 attempts with armored columns to advance. The biggest one was back on March 7th. But there's been 3 more. None of them have been successful. And Russia in particular suffered a lot of losses in this area over the weekend. Next, if we zoom in into Turets in New York, Russian and Ukrainian forces have been trading positions in this area along this line. There is a very large area of no man's land to the north, because every now and then Russian squads are infiltrating into this area, but likewise, Ukrainian squads are infiltrating into this area. Now, you might be wondering, why is there so much no man's land this far east of the line of conflict? Ukrainian drone operators, the Birds of Magyar, are operating in this area, and this is what we call a logistics denial zone. Russian troops can barely move in this area because it is so saturated with Ukrainian drones. At Pokrovsk, Ukrainian forces have been pushing Russian troops back very slowly, basically through all of 2025. But I can't stress enough, very, very slowly. Russia used to control Pashain. They don't control it anymore. Shevchenko is completely contested. Russian control is south of the village. But again, we're seeing Russian units still infiltrating into most of Shevchenko. Ukrainian forces have made some progress in Zlin. Ukrainian forces control most of this village. Ukrainian forces control most of Lisvika, except for the eastern edge. This is a significant improvement from a tactical standpoint from 3 months ago, because this has provided a lot of relief to the city here. If you take a look here, here's that drone denial zone again, almost all the way out to Selidov. Russian forces can barely move any equipment along this area. Because of that logistics denial zone, Russian forces are having a real problem in what we're calling the Solon salient. So this is Solon. And this area is this bulge, a salient, a bulge. Let me go ahead and flip that out one more, and you can see that bulge a lot better. Russian forces are having a very hard time moving material and personnel in this area. And Ukrainian forces have been chipping away, coming in from the west and heading east, to the point that Russia over the weekend blew up a very small bridge right here that enters into Sloan to disrupt Ukrainian logistics. And as one analyst put it, you can read into that what you want. There are a lot of Russian reports that Ukrainian forces control about half of this village, but there's no pictures, no videos. And our mapping protocol is no pictures, no videos. It didn't happen. We know that Russian forces can't be west of here because they blew up the bridge. So they have no way to supply themselves. Clearly, somebody in Russia is worried about what's happening in that area. All right, let me zoom out. Over the weekend, Russia attempted a pretty significant armor assault coming out of Sribne. I hope I'm saying this right. And Nadiavika. And we know that they got into this area, and we know that they got down here into Bodandovika. But what we don't know is, was Russia able to consolidate any of these positions? Because the geolocated videos show that all of the Russian armored columns were wiped out. 100% wiped out. It goes back to this drone denial zone. We have nothing but wrecks of Russian armor from here to here, including right on the eastern edge. There was a couple of destroyed Russian T-90 tanks right in that area right there. But we see no signs that Russian troops were able to dig in and hold these positions. That doesn't mean that they didn't, which is why we have this as a gray area. And we did acknowledge in advance, we did move the line of conflict west. We're just waiting for more information at this point to understand what happened in that area over the weekend. In the area of Velika Novosilka, there has been significant fighting, but Russian forces have not made any new advances in this area. And in the Zaporizhia Oblast, south of Orikhiv, same thing. There has been some very significant fighting in this area, but no new advances by Russian forces. There is something new that we're seeing over the last week. Russia started its last offensive in October of 2023, and it continued until January of 2025. When it culminated, Russia exhausted its combat power. It does appear that Russia is trying to start a new offensive, but it also appears they weren't very prepared for it. They're short on armor. Their logistics are in very poor condition. And we're starting to see, when we look at videos of Russian troops going into these assaults, we're seeing Russian soldiers without ballistic protection and without helmets again. We hadn't seen that since early 2023. So this really feels like Russia is trying to rush an offensive, no pun intended, because of the ongoing alleged peace talks. They're trying to improve their position. And in the past, when Russia has carried out more than 150 attacks in a day, we generally would find that Russia has made a significant tactical advance somewhere in Ukraine. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 meters, captured a village or two. We're not seeing that. 4 of the last 5 days, Russia has carried out more than 200 attacks. Now, that includes Kursk and Belgorod all mixed together. So that's not 200 in Ukraine. What we're seeing is these, 1,000 meters here, 500 meters there. We're not seeing these big tactical advances. What Russian sources are saying is this is because of these logistic denial zones. The Ukrainian drones are making it impossible for Russian troops to form up, say, a company-sized unit, move that unit from the second echelon to the first echelon to the zero line so they can launch an attack, have that unit arrive intact, and be able to do it where nobody knows that they're coming. I could show you that data. I'm going to take you over to our blue sky. The lack of Russian advances is significant given the operational tempo. For the last 5 days, 200 plus Russian attacks per day with very little to show for it. On the 29th, 223 assaults, 192 in Ukraine, 31 in Kursk. 7-day moving average for attacks is up to 193. That's really high. Ukraine only 171, also high. And Kursk only 22, and that's where it's been hovering. If you're watching this on TikTok, you'll have to do the clean screen trick because I know the most important part of this chart is blocked by all of the TikTok icons. Sorry, nothing I can do about that. This chart starts on August 6th. That's when Ukraine started their Kursk counter invasion. It goes all the way through to the 30th of March. When we did this, that was the latest available data. And you probably see there is this sharp increase. If I go here, this is the last 90 days, Ukraine and Kursk combined. And you can see again, this very sharp increase that's been happening. This is Ukraine only. And again, we see that increase. And then this is Kursk only. This here is the early part of March when Russia pushed Ukraine out of Sudzha. And then you see that it's kind of flatline, right? We're back to this new normal. Well, how come you're not saying that the offensive is restarted? We need more data. We have to be able to see if Russia can maintain this operational tempo for more than 6 days. We need about 2 weeks of data total to be able to say with confidence, yes, Russia has started a new offensive. When we look at and we see the lack of armor, the use of horses and donkeys for logistics, we're seeing Russian troops going into combat with no ballistic protection and no helmets. That has us feeling that what's happening right now is very rushed, that this is tied to the peace negotiations, alleged peace negotiations, and Russia trying to improve their position, to try to go, see, Ukraine can't defend itself. And at least for the last 6 or 7 days, it hasn't been going very well for Russia. Yes, they've made some small marginal gains, but again, we're not seeing these big tactical advances. We're not seeing new villages being captured. So we're going to continue to monitor the situation. And that's everything we know. If you like in-depth coverage like this, go ahead and give us a like and follow. And once again, because this all may go away, if you want to continue to get this, you can always follow us on our Substack. Malcontent out.